Hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine Chisme Podcast. Apologies if I sound a little bit different. I am at my in-laws' house. I don't have my microphone with me, but it doesn't matter because we have an amazing guest with us, and I'm so excited to welcome Karen Vidangos. How are you, Karen?
Hi, I am doing really well. How are you? Thank you for
Uh,
having me on.
oh, you know what? I'm so excited because you were part of our New York panel when we were talking about arts and fashion, representation in arts and fashion. And now I get to hear more because we got to, when you have a panel and when you're kind of limited, and we had a good time. Don't get me wrong, right?
It was
We had wine.
beautiful,
We
wasn't it?
Oh, it was. You know what? First of all, let me just say thank you so much for being part of that because we had so much amazing feedback. And I hope that you and Cindy got the love that people were sharing with me in regards to what you were able to share about your stories, your journey, what you want to do. It's so, so important that we, share these things and that we support one another. And I literally reached out to you via TikTok. And I was like, hey, I want to do this thing. And I'm going to be in New York. And I would love to have you as a panelist. And you didn't even hesitate. You're like, absolutely. I will totally be a
Let's
part of
do
this.
it.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, it was absolutely incredible. I'm so
Um,
glad that you reached out. It was truly incredible to see so many beautiful people there and getting to meet Cindy. I mean, now we're connected in New York, so I'm definitely going to be reaching out to her, hanging out, getting some of those clothes.
right. Yes. And, you know, for 2013, it was the first time I took the podcast on tour. And that was like one of my dreams. And when we had the performance by Jazzy, when she started us off with one of her songs, all week, I was there all week. And it was one of those things where I was just like, just working and just trying to get stuff done and trying to put out little fires that were happening. And when she started singing at that moment, I was like, holy shit, this is my event and I'm in New York. I'm in New York and this is my event. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was so surreal. And, it was just a crescendo of what I have been dreaming to do. And so to have, a panel such as yourself and Cindy, and we wanted to get one more person, but, it was like, and I had to acknowledge it right away. And I had people like really appreciative of that because, it was me, you, and Cindy, three light skinned Latinas, right? Talking about representation in arts and fashion. Now, first of all, where else would I do that topic? Of course, I'm going to do that in New York, arts and fashion, right? But we really wanted to not only represent arts within like what you do, but arts within like the artistic, like the performing arts as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very important that we had, to me it's always important that we have, diversity within our community, within the diaspora, right? And we had a couple people who wanted to come that were Afro Latino, and unfortunately, I mean, the great thing is they were booked and busy. Unfortunately for us, they were booked and busy, like I said. But we just had such a rad conversation, and that's why I'm so excited to like be able to have a much more nuanced and deeper conversation with you this way as well. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely incredible. I mean, again, thank you so much for reaching out. It was truly such a special occasion. And, for anyone who wasn't there, this was the first time that my parents actually got to come out and see me do what I do. They don't really they know that I work in the museum field. They know I do social media, but I do a lot of speaking engagements. I talk to students, I do a lot of things outside of that that is relevant to the museum field, but they don't get to see that, right? And so this is the first time they got to see me talking to an audience about what I do. And anyways, that kind of added to how special that occasion was.
Yes, there was a lot of emotions going on that day. Like
Yeah.
Cindy started crying as she was talking about her husband, and you were getting emotional
Yeah.
talking about your parents, and I was getting emotional just being like blown away by what was happening. There was definitely a lot of emotions. Well, before we get into all of the things, all of the chisme, all of your story and everything, we always start with the wine. And our I never force anybody to drink wine, but are you partaking today? And if so, what are you drinking?
No, I'm actually just got some regular green tea because I feel like I've got a little bit something coming on, so I'm trying to do a little prevention. So no wine for me today.
Girl, I mean, obviously I just went through a whole and is still going through this whole medical stuff. So yes, take care of you. Today's the first time I am drinking in what feels like forever. Because obviously I was in the hospital, and then while I was taking it, didn't say I couldn't have alcohol while I was taking my medication, but I was like, I just am gonna refrain because I really
Yeah.
want to just get better. So today is the first time in probably, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, at least 2 weeks, maybe three, that I've had a glass of
You deserve it. Have that wine, girl.
wine. Yes. So I'm actually having, and the bottle is out there. So like I said, I'm at my in-laws and we're having a tamalada. So my mother-in-law has friends over, and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law are here, and they're making tamales. So they're having a tamale party over there, and I'm here. I was like, okay, I got to take a break. I'll be back. So the bottle is actually out there, but this is from a Fallbrook winery, and it's called 33 North, and it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. I don't want to see if it'll let me. Sometimes well, it won't let me show the bottle, but salud, salud, my
Sad.
first sip of wine in 3 weeks. Oh, oh wow, that was good. That's really good. So let me start by just showing you, girl, you know, when you haven't had that a long time, it hits different.
Just take the tastes in, right? That's the point.
Let
You
me
gotta,
tell you.
right.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's like, oh, yeah, that's good. And you know what? It could be a really good wine already, but I think the fact that I haven't had a drink in so long makes it even better. Mm, yeah, that's good. And you know what? It's so funny. I'm looking at my face right now and I'm seeing, because, I was in the hospital for a week, and I think I lost like 7 or 8 pounds while I was in the hospital. And I'd been working out. This is not a diet I recommend or endorse. Do not go into the hospital to lose weight. But I can already see it in my face. I'm like, hey, I'm
Oh no.
hey, you got to find the humor in those things, right? All right, let
Look.
me start with I know. Let me start with your bio. So Karen Vidangos is the founder of Latinx Art Collective, the first nationwide database exclusively for Latinx artists in the United States, and she's also the social media manager for the Guggenheim Museum in New York. Known online as Latina in Museums, Vidangos uses the digital space to explore and elevate underrepresented perspectives in the arts. As a social media specialist, Vidangos has created engaging strategies to support the Obama Portraits Tour, and the 2019 American Portrait Gala for the National Portrait Gallery. She was also selected to lead the social media strategy and launch of the Smithsonian's institution wide initiative, Our Shared Future, Reckoning with Our Racial Past. Previous to this, Vidangos led the strategy and launch of Glenstone Museum's social media presence, timed with their expansion reopening in 2021. Girl, let me just say, I was so excited to connect with you. Like I said, I followed you online I found you on TikTok. You came up on my FYP. And anytime, and I want to like start with like how you got into that and everything, but I just wanted to share this because anytime I see, you know, people that come from communities and colors in spaces that we're not normally seen at, I get so excited. So when I
Mm-hmm.
saw you on TikTok, it was an instant, like, no hesitation. Follow. I need to know. I need to follow this woman. I need to see what she's doing because, we don't see that very often, right? We don't see, especially like the Guggenheim is a really, like, in my head, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but in my head, when you think of like prestigious museums, Guggenheim is one of those museums that you think of, right? You think,
Yeah.
and to see a Latina leading the social media charge for such a prestigious museum is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. But before we go to like how that happened, right? I want to like I want to really start with like where you grew up, and I know you're Bolivian. Um
Yep.
and I love, and I want to hear like what your relationship to arts and what your parents' relationship or your familial relationship to art was growing up.
Yeah. Well, so and I really love talking about um that journey simply because it was not a straight line. Getting to this point in my career, I was all over the place. And so I use that story as kind of to inspire people and to really let everyone know that there is space for them, there is room for them, and to not let any fears or challenges kind of get in the way of their passion. But growing up, my parents are immigrants, and so as a child of immigrants, they wanted something that would bring financial security. Being in the arts is not that, one might say. So that was not something that they encouraged. Now, I did grow up in a creative household. My sister played the piano, my dad plays the guitar, I grew up with my mother singing. Our basement had like a whole studio, recordings, everything. And I just remember that as a child, like sitting on a stool, listening to my mom singing into a microphone while my dad sort of like, I guess you could call, he was like the manager and using all of these tools and equipment that I wish I knew the name of, but I really don't. But I just remember all of these things in our basement used for music, to record music, to improve the sound, to, instruments. And that was the environment I grew up in. It was a creative household, and they encouraged that. They encouraged that creative expression, not necessarily for a career, but they encouraged the expression of this creativity. And somewhere along the way, I kind of took that and I was like, no, I think I'm going to do this full time.
When did you, because like I'm somebody, I grew up like loving to sing and loving to perform and all that stuff. And I guess in some way I'm still performing, right? In some semblance. But I feel like there comes a moment where you're just like, you fall like you fall in love, right? Like I don't know if I remember the moment I fell in love with. Actually, I don't think there was a moment I fell in love with people. I've always loved people, right? Like I've
Hmm.
always, and so I feel like everything that I've done in my entire life has been about working with people and being around people and hearing stories and wanting to like know more about them. What was, do you maybe recall that moment where you were just like, and I think there's also a difference, right? We talk about the performing arts and then
Yeah.
we talk about more like the traditional, what people think art is when going to a museum. Was there a moment where that pulled you towards like that type of artistic expression and being able to like see the beauty
Yeah.
in going to a museum and whatever versus like a performing art type of mindset?
Yeah, so actually I initially did want to go into a performing arts route, I guess. When I was younger, I would sing. I'm bopping around just singing, and I was very serious about that. I took classes, and my dad, like I mentioned earlier, kind of managed my mom and helped her record a few things. And so he saw that that's what I wanted to do. So he kind of started working with me in that direction. But um, I think the visual arts pulled me in a very different um in a different way. It pulled at my heartstrings in a different way. There was something about the visual aspect that attracted me. And in the beginning, because I grew up in a household of creativity, my initial thinking was, oh, I want to be an artist. And so that's what I did for like a year and a half. I was painting, I was drawing, and definitely, I'm telling you right now, I'm not an artist. I can't paint, I can't draw. I mean, I'm not an artist, but I gave
I
it a
can,
shot.
girl, I get you. I can barely draw a stick figure.
I gave it a shot, and that's the most that I could do. But I think what was the complete pivot and was something that I didn't really realize was a direction I could even go in was I took an art history class, and that was it. It End of story, done. That's the direction I needed to go in. I took an art history class and realized that while I grew up in a household of creative expression, I was encouraged to creatively express, and I tried these different pathways to do that, whether that be singing or dancing or painting. I realized it really was the history of it that I was fascinated by, the storytelling. And so I immediately, my background is it's a roller coaster, but long story short, I had dropped out of University of Maryland. And when I went back, I decided to go back for a bachelor's in art history. And that kind of began the path for me to where I am now is art history.
So, did you grow up in the Maryland area?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I, I'm not sure. I'm not very familiar with that area or the demographics or anything like that. I were you when you were going to school and when you were going, especially in particular with these like art history classes, was your face the only brown face that you saw in those classes? And if so, how like is that something that you noticed and perceived? And did that like how did that affect your perception of what you wanted to do?
Yes, I was definitely one of the few brown faces in any of these courses. Um, and I think that I wasn't fully self-aware of that at that point. It kind of took me a while. I think I was so wrapped up in the worry of what I was going to do with my life that I wasn't thinking outside of that of, oh, wait a minute, I'm the only one that looks like me in here. Wait a minute. And it took me a while after I started feeling a little more confident in the direction I was going in that I kind of looked up and I realized, wait, I happened to be one of the few brown people in these classes and one of the few brown people with some of these challenges. And that's kind of, my career, the story of my career has so many chapters, and that, that's one of the later ones where, I had too many things, and I think this happens to a lot of us. Like, I cannot think about being the only Latina right now because I have bills to pay, I got a job to do, I have so many other things to worry about. I can't take that up as well. But when I finally figured out that I wanted to go in this art history, direction, that's kind of when I realized, some of the challenges that I was having was because I was a Latina, having to work full time and go to school. That's a challenge that Black and Brown communities face all the time because historically, statistically, we don't have that wealth, and that power to go to school full time, not have to worry about money, right? So um, when I woke up to that a little bit, it was fascinating. I I want to say I was disappointed, but I knew it wasn't surprising. But I think more than that, I think it just kind of made me determined. Um, I had already gone through the financial crisis of 2008. This was not going to bring me down.
I remember in when we were in our panel, and when you were saying you dropped out and you went back, and girl, I get that. Like I totally, understand that because you um I didn't graduate college till I was 37, like almost 20 years to the day that I graduated high school. And the and I think it's something when you decide to go back, and especially when you've had a break and you have to do what you need to do to survive, right? Which is
Mhm.
what so many of us have gone through, right?
Mhm.
um and when you decide to go back, you're not doing it for anybody else but yourself, because that's something that
Mhm.
nobody can take away from you, right? Education is what, however you get
Yeah.
educated, right? Whether it's through
Mhm.
reading, whether it's through storytelling, whether it's through all of these things. And because I think right now we're in this moment of the only way to be educated is to go to a 4-year university. No, 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 no.
Right.
Like we're educated in so many other ways. When you went back and you're like, this is what I'm doing, and you know what, I may be the only brown face, but guess what, I'm a freaking like bust my ass. You're gonna see me. I feel like inside you, just from getting to know you a little bit, you're gonna be like, watch out,
Well,
right? Like I might be the only brown face, but guess what, I'm here, watch out. So what was that like when you decided to go back? Obviously, you're a little bit older, a little bit wiser. You've learned some other lessons because you've had to live life. How did you bring
mhm.
that into your like comeback, going back? Not like I say comeback, like don't call it a comeback, right? Like I think I'm LL Cool J or something. Um, but how did you use that when you like to pursue now what you're like, this is what I want to do?
Well, I had the advantage, like you said, I had the advantage of having to live a life a little outside of university bubble. This is post-economic crisis of 2008. I had to drop out of school. I had to get a full-time job. I had to move back home. I suddenly had to, I had debt to pay off. Like there's a lot of growing up that I had to do. Um, and when I felt finally ready to go back, I think that when you're young, um, you don't have the advantage of um, thinking 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead. I maybe that's changed now with the younger generation, but when I was younger, I wasn't thinking about my life 10 years from that point. I was thinking about what I'm going to do that weekend. But now I came back and I knew exactly what I needed to do. It was all business. I was about business, girl. I was getting that bachelor's degree. I was figuring out next steps. Like we were making it happen because this time, we weren't wasting a single dollar. I was gonna make this bachelor's happen. I was gonna make that master's degree happen. I was gonna make this career happen. And that was not my thinking when I first went into college. It's simply, I was definitely a lot more naive, and not entirely focused the way I was when I came back, but I really got to work, with zero expectations. I just got to work, and put myself into spaces, no matter where, when, or how. I just did it. And yeah, I mean, I made it happen.
Oh, I feel you because that's how I was, going back. And I was in my 30s when I went back too. Um, and it was just like, yay, you can have your conversations. Yes, I will be friendly. Yes, I will, but like I'm here for a purpose.
Mhm,
I'm not
mhm.
like I'm like same thing. And I was working full time and going to school full girl, one semester. I don't know how I did it. I was working full time and taking 15 units. I was at school 5 days a week. I have no idea how
Whoa.
I did it. And now I'm like, how? Because I don't have
I
that energy
know. Oh,
anymore.
I definitely don't have that energy. And it can feel weird too, right? When you go back and you're a little bit older, you kind of feel out of place. And it's not even like you just feel out of place because everyone is younger. And,
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I was behind, right? Like, oh, I should have graduated years ago. But I think in the end, it worked out in my favor having all of that life experience.
When you told your parents you were going back to school and you were going back for art history, what was their reaction?
What? Art history. What are you going to do with that? Mind you, I went into university as a government and politics major, which is very unsurprising for someone that lives in the DC metropolitan area. So to go from government and politics to art, because I switched my major to art before I dropped out. And then I was going back for art history, which I suppose sounds better than just art. I don't know, but they were certainly confused. Certainly confused. But to their credit, they didn't argue with me. They didn't try to stop me. They were just they were concerned, but they didn't try to stop me.
They're like, ¿qué es esto? What do you mean art history? What is that?
What is
Just like with so like because I get it because you do social media and my like certain things that I do, my parents they don't they just say, oh, she works in this, but they don't like with the podcast, they actually say, oh, well, she has a podcast. But anything else, like when you work in PR or something, they have
Yeah.
no concept of what that is. And they're like, she works for a council member or she works at this I don't know, she works for this company and but she also has a podcast. Like it just like they can't wrap their head around it. It's always
I know.
so
Unless
funny.
it's like lawyer, doctor, it's you do what? Social media manager for a museum. So yeah, I'm on my phone all day, mom. That's what I do.
Yeah. This is my job.
This is
It's like I love how because like going back later, going to school right after high school. And one thing that I found is like for me, and I would love to hear what your experience it was. For me, I couldn't do internships. I couldn't do like I had to work. I had bills to pay. I had you know, um I did do for a moment for a little bit. I worked, well, actually I worked, so never mind. Let's cut that out, JP. Let's go back to this. Let me start my editor. Okay. Because I had to work, I had to pay bills, I had to, you know what I mean? Like nobody was gonna pay my things for me. So, you have these things where like I couldn't just take an unpaid internship at a PR agency. I
Yeah.
couldn't just do that. So, especially within the art world, how like where was that gap for you? Did you experience something similar in regards to like having, because I didn't even live at home. I lived in a different state as my parents as well. So it wasn't
Mhm.
like I could move back with my parents and do that. Like, and
Right.
I wouldn't want to be in my 30s. Like for me personally, everybody to each their own, right? I love my family, but I need my space.
I mean,
So
to
what was your
be
experience
honest,
in that?
when I went to college right out of high school, I really, I didn't know about internships. Or at least my memory of that time, I was either not thinking about it or I didn't really realize it was something that I needed to have. Um, because I do not recall a moment where I was thinking about, oh, I need to get an internship or I can't get an internship because I don't have time. I wasn't thinking about it at all. And now, mind you, this is like over a decade ago. So my memory is slowly starting to fade away. But I didn't have I didn't have the benefit of having family to help guide me through this process. Um, you know, my father went to university in Bolivia, but he grew up in a time when there was a dictatorship. So the university effectively shut down right in the middle of it. So I I was the first child to go to college, and in the United States, it's a whole beast, right? To navigate through. So I didn't really have that guidance, and I certainly don't recall counselors helping me through it. I think the most that they did was say, okay, where are you applying to? Okay, let's make sure you got your applications and go. But outside of that, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I was doing it on my own. So that was my undergrad university experience. Just a lot of question marks.
Right? I think that's so many of our like so many experiences. When was like so when you went back and you knew like how do you find that? Like how are you like or where is that something you were even thinking of in regards to you were like, I'm focused, I want to get and then once you're done, do you I'm so for me, let me just say, when it comes to the art world, I'm a dunce, totally a dunce. Like I will fully admit it, right? Like I will look at something, and some things I do feel like I think the one of the beautiful things about art is it's completely subjective. Everybody things can evoke different emotions in different people. You see different
Mhm.
like you 10 people could look at the same piece of art and they could all have a different interpretation of it.
Mhm.
But when it comes to like where do you start? Like you're done, you're focused, you're like, okay, I'm done. Where do you go from there? Like how do you I feel like museums, especially when it comes to people that come from communities of color, like
Yeah.
there's just it just feels like there's this barrier there. And how do you overcome that so you can start working in what you want. You can start showing other people that come from communities of color that this does not have to be a barrier. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I had to sort of figure it out on my own and put those pieces together. And, that's why it took me so long because I really didn't know what I was doing. Um, but it really wasn't until I went to grad school that I started to figure out how to be proactive in my career. Up until that point, I was doing what felt was the right decision, but I wasn't entirely sure. Grad schools felt like the obvious answer. And part of my program, we had to do internships. And through those internships is where you meet people, network and start building on that resume and that experience. And that was kind of like the launching pad to my career now. But you're right. There's so many different jobs that you can have in a museum, and so therefore so many different pathways to museums. And all of those pathways are it can be such a huge mystery, full of individual challenges that Black and Brown people are just not privy to, because it's just not something that a lot of us were really uh, shown as an option, something available to us. And so you're not the only one. You're not a dummy. You're not a dunce. It's there's still some career paths in museums that are still a mystery to me. But people come from so many different backgrounds. It just really depends on what you're interested in, whether it's education or curatorial or conservation. I have a good friend who's a conservator. Her background's in science. Our educators, background in education, our curatorial, have PhDs in art history. People in my department, marketing, communications, that's that marketing communications background, not always art history. I don't have a degree in communications. It's art history and museum studies, but just there's so many different places that one can come from to be in the museum space. But I think that for me, at least what I can do now that I'm here to illuminate how I got to social media, is through that art history museum studies path, and more importantly through networking, networking my tail off and just talking to anyone and everyone who is interested in talking to me, about my interests, about what I wanted to do, about learning about more what everyone else was doing, and learning about everyone else's projects, and just finding friendships. And that really does help guide you along and help you on your path.
What was your first job in was it within a museum? Was it within like when you finally you graduate, you get your bachelor's, you go to grad school, you get your master's. Now you're like, okay, now I'm looking for a job. And obviously, like, girl, I get the networking. I'm queen of networking. I love, but I'm also like we were talking beforehand. I'm like an extroverted extrovert. That's why this whole hospitalization, like I'm a callejera. I look, I am a proud callejera. I know it. It's okay. Like growing up, my mom would always be like, I so uh so being around people is like a huge that's where I get my energy. And obviously networking, no matter what industry you're in, is such a huge part in your career development because you meet people who will, you know, sometimes be your cheerleader, sometimes be your advocate, sometimes will be your mentor. Like what and then were you finding that, and is that what led to your what was your first job after that? Like were you able,
Yeah.
was it easy to get into like your foot in the door to say now I'm here
Yeah.
and I'm not
um
going anywhere?
I'll say yes and no. It didn't feel easy to me at the time, but I think in retrospect, I had it a lot easier than most people in this field. Most people in this field graduate and find it difficult to find a job. They'll spend years trying to look for a job, any job that will hire them from any museum, any historic house. It is just incredibly difficult to get your foot in the door, no matter how many internships you have, because there are just so few positions that are available. So I want to say that looking back, it probably was definitely easier than most. I spent looking for a job after I graduated from grad school, maybe about 6 months. And the job I ended up getting was, I believe it was communications coordinator for Glenstone Museum in Potomac, Maryland. And that job was pretty much like 95% social media. And I helped build their social media presence and accounts for their grand reopening expansion project. And that was truly a blessed position to be in, considering how truly difficult it is for anyone to get a job in this field. And so to have that job be the first job is is a blessing.
And when you're, I always wonder, first of all, when I first read your bio prior to the New York event, it's like, wow, because you have really, it's very impressive. Let me just say, first of all,
Thank
it's very impressive. And I applaud you so much in regards to the things that you've been able to do. Um, First, you know, having this, the first thing that obviously caught my eye was you created these strategies to support the Obama Portraits Tour. And then
Mhm.
the next thing, I know you did this other American Portrait Gala thing, but the next thing I said is you helped lead the social media strategy and launch of now, and this is huge. This is like the Smithsonian is an institution, right? It's beyond just like it's just a part of it, just encompasses so much of what this country has lacked, what this
Mhm.
country has given, what this country has like, I think there's so much there. But this initiative called Our Shared Future, Reckoning with Our Racial Past. That was the second
Yeah.
thing that I just really popped out. How did you get involved in that? And how did that, as a Latina, like, right,
Mhm.
how did that make you feel being part of this this thing that probably you can identify with, right?
Yeah.
Obviously there's been this huge, there's a lot of back and forth in regards to Latinos in America, like particularly Mexicans, but beyond that, like with, you know, people that come from Central and South America, there's this huge thing. And how did that feel as a Latina, like being part of creating this initiative?
Um, I think like a lot of things in my life that have happened since graduating, it just feels like a blessing. I was actually reached out to by at that point I was the social media manager for the National Portrait Gallery, a Smithsonian institution, and the social media strategist for the Smithsonian institution, like the Central Smithsonian, reached out to me asking if I was interested in being part of this initiative that was being worked on with the Secretary Lonnie Bunch. Um, and, it was for two reasons I think I was reached out to. One, I had worked closely with that person in the past before they knew me very well. And obviously, they knew my work as a social media manager at the Portrait Gallery. But two, I have been speaking very openly about race and marginalization in the museum field, being a Latina in the museum field for a very long time. And so I think that also kind of give I think that was part of the reason why I was reached out to, because they knew that I could take a look at our collection and make that connection to a wider story that needs to be told. And part of the mission of this initiative was really to do just that, to not just talk about here's an object that the American history collected, but what does that object mean in terms of the racism of this country, right? It's digging into the deeper roots and connecting all of these objects from all of these museums within the Smithsonian and putting together the story to bring to light um, these histories that we don't often talk about, and do that through that digital medium of social media to this wide audience.
Oh, girl, please tell me you were not the only Black or brown person in that, like, part of that.
No, well, for this initiative, they convened a very large group pulled from many different other Smithsonian museums. Social media was me, that strategist, and our sort of supervisor, the public relations person, was a Black woman. She's no longer there anymore, but she was a Black woman. And I worked a lot with actually Dr. Adiana Curtis, who is a Black curator for the National Museum of African American History and Culture, who's brilliant, brilliant woman. So definitely not the only person of color on this team. But it was definitely exciting to be part of. And, knowing that this is something that the Smithsonian was doing incredibly important work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, sometimes you see, well, oftentimes, not even sometimes, oftentimes you see whether it's a commercial or whether it's this or whether it's that, and you're like, was there nobody, like, it just completely misses the mark, right? And you're like, who was in the room and said that was okay? And then you find out that there's nobody that came from any communities of color that were in the room, and you're like, well, no freaking wonder, right? Like, this is ridiculous. So like, I find that happens just way too much. And it makes me also wonder, like, who have your, like, my biggest advocates have been Black women in my career, um especially early on in my career. And
Yeah.
it, you know I think there's no segment of the population who gets disrespected more and deserves more respect than Black women. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so I like I've found it so humbling and so honored that I've had so many Black women like be my advocate, be my mentors and everything. Who have you found to be your biggest advocates and be your biggest mentor, and really like say, hey, there's an opportunity, hey, about this, or like who has been that for you?
Well, it's really been a community throughout this time. But I will say that when I started this journey of um, speaking about museums with the perspective of a person of color. So, I started out in my bubble trying to figure out my life, what I was going to do. I kind of found a pathway and I looked up and realized, wait a minute, there's a lot of issues here, a lot of challenges here. And when I started digging into those challenges that are particular to communities of color, it was Black women who were the ones having done the work, done the research, written the papers. Those are the resources that I look to in figuring out my own space in this field and realizing these problems and how I was how I fit into all of it. Um, and it was all on Twitter. I might have mentioned this when we were at the event, but it was Black women on Twitter who were in museums. There's such an active, or was an active, community of museum people having these conversations of being Black, being brown in museum spaces specifically. And I got to connect with a lot of these people and get to know them, get to know their work, learn a lot from them. And yeah, that was sort of the foundation of my education is the work that Black women have done in the museum field, to bring us to the point where we are now. I mean, there's so many research papers out there about this. And where did that come from? But the Black women who were doing the work.
Yeah. Now you're at the Guggenheim, and you, like I said at the beginning, like the Guggenheim is, you think of museums, and I think the Guggenheim is one of those museums that you think of, right? It's like, oh my gosh, it's, I had never, so no, that I had told you when I went, I was like, I've never been to the, I've been to MoMA. Have I don't know if I've been to the Met or not. Been to MoMA for sure. Which is the Museum of Modern Art for people who don't know in New York. And but I had never been to the Guggenheim. And one thing that we were talking about is you hear that all the time, particularly from other Latinos and other people that come from communities of color, that they may have gone to other museums, but they've never gone to the Guggenheim. First of all, so it's a two-parter question. First, how, actually no, I'll go back to this question in a minute. So how does that make you feel being a Latina? And I know that one of your big initiatives, not just for the Guggenheim, but just in general, is to
Mhm.
really get more people that come from communities of color exposed to museums and exposed to wanting to come out, to come to the Guggenheim. Because you said, like, you're like, that's what I hear all the time is people say they've never been to the Guggenheim.
Yeah.
And now that you're in this position, how, like, is that a burden? Does that feel heavy? Like, heavy is the head that wears the crown, so to speak?
No, 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 no. I I talk a lot about the challenges and barriers of being in Latina in museums, but it I have a lot of privilege, and I recognize that. Um, the privilege of being able to go to college, the privilege of being able to network, because that takes cost, right? To go out there and pay money and transportation, da, da, da. There's a lot of little pieces here and there where I have had the privilege to be part of. And so now I feel like it's something that I have to do. It's not a burden. It's not even really like a challenge. I don't feel like I have an option, right? Like people deserve to be seen. Black and brown communities deserve to be seen. They deserve to be welcomed with open arms in spaces and to feel like they belong there because they belong at the Guggenheim. Museums historically not made for Black and brown people. But in 2023, they very much should be a part of the fabric of these institutions, of what we see, who we see, how we see it. And so for me, in the position that I'm in as social media person, from what I can control, it is an honor, if anything, to be able to try to bring these communities into the space, because art has done so much for me in my life. I want Black and brown communities to feel that same magic, passion, power, of art.
And you use TikTok beautifully in regards to sharing those stories. How, what is your, what, like, obviously that's how we met. And I'm so happy we did because you're just such a lovely person, Karen. Seriously. I'm so happy we met and connected and everything. And um what have you found the response on TikTok to be as a Latina in museums? Have you found people saying, "Oh my gosh, I've never been. I want to go," or like, what's been like kind of the feedback that you've gotten from your social media, not just the Google, and have you seen that trickle over to the Guggenheim social accounts, or even who's coming in?
Oh yeah, definitely. So for my personal, it's been overwhelmingly positive, which has been very exciting to see. I get these comments from other Latinas who are excited, who have also I get a lot of comments from people saying they've never been to the Guggenheim and now they're gonna go, and that's just so exciting for me to see because I want to see more Black and brown people at the Guggenheim. And that has trickled over to the Guggenheim. In the sense that those very comments of people saying they have never been and now they want to go. And I screenshot those comments. I show that to my boss and I'm like, look here. You've got people
I
who have
love
never
that.
been to Guggenheim. um, but also I have connected with a lot, just like you did with me. I've connected with a lot of these content creators who I didn't know because I didn't know before because I was on Instagram. Um, and all of this exciting art content that other creators are making now, you know, these younger generations who are building on it on their own. And so now I'm connecting with them, inviting them into the space to explore the Guggenheim through their eyes. And that's more of what I want to do. I want to connect with more content creators who have a passion for arts and culture and bring them to the Guggenheim and give them that space to create content how they see the museum.
Yes, when we went, unfortunately, you guys were changing out the installation, but we did get to see like I think it was the Korean one that was happening, which some of it, I'm not gonna lie, I totally did not understand. Some of it was very cool, and some of it I was just like, I don't know what this means, but cool.
Yes, only the young experimental art in Korea from the 1960s and 70s, which has so much to do. There's so much connection there with Latin American history because the artists of that time in Korea were really up against a government who was censoring them. And so that art was created kind of in protest. And so Latin American countries know a lot about, you know, dictatorships and censorship and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I Yeah, like some of it I was like, okay, I don't know. Maybe I would if I maybe you should have read about it a little bit more prior to going into it, because if I would have went in with those eyes, I think that would have changed the way that I was looking at everything. If I was looking at it like just that brief little summary that you shared, I probably would have looked at things very, very differently. Right. And then we did go, yeah, because some of this I was like, um, I don't understand what this
But I'm glad
means,
you got to
but
see it. I'm
I,
glad you went.
I did. But I will say this, I was like, I appreciate it for because obviously it means something to the artist that was doing it. But
Mhm.
even if I didn't understand it, like, because maybe, like I said, I wasn't looking at it with those eyes. But now I have to go back through my camera and look at some of the photos I took and maybe see, like, oh, okay, I get that now. But
Make
some
that
of it I
connection.
did understand it. And then, yeah, exactly. And then we did go into like where the portraits were with more of the traditional artists. Um, what is your favorite type of art, and who's your favorite artist?
Um, I don't like that question. And I'll tell you why. Because it's like asking a parent who their favorite child is.
I get it. I get it because everybody asks me what my favorite wine is. I'm like, really?
I can't
Yeah.
pick. There's so many great mediums and so many great artists. But I will say that right now, who I'm excited about is a young Latina artist, Yvette Mayorga, who has a show at the Aldrich Contemporary Museum. And she does incredible work that is kind of bursting with this baby pink tones. And it's really reflective of just femininity, but the strength and femininity. Um, and it's got a very like textural feel to it. But she's doing incredible work right now, and she's incredibly sweet on top of that. I love an artist who's kind. I love kind people. And no, but she's such a brilliant artist. She's doing amazing things. So she's an artist that I'm really like got top of mind right now. Um, so I'll that's how I'll answer that question.
Yeah. No, I like that because it's like who I'm excited about right now. Because I feel the same, like I'm like, what I like right now. Oh, wait, I just tried this. That gets me excited. So I get it. I get it. Um, but beyond the Guggenheim and everything that you've been doing within these museums, you've actually created a directory or a database of Latina artists in the United States, which I do need to send you some names because we've had few artists here. And actually, one of the artists, the one I was telling you who makes the piñatas, and her art has some a couple of museums have actually purchased her piñatas to keep in their museum. I actually told her about you and about the database, and I was like, I'm gonna send your name over. She's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's so cool. She was so excited. How did the Latinx art collective get started? I know you talked about it in the panel, but how did that get started? And like, where do you want that to go and progress to?
Yeah. Well, it kind of started as I used to have an account called the Latinx Curated. And the whole purpose of that account was really showing the community in museum spaces, simply because as a social media person in the field, I'm connected with a lot of influencers who are posting their beautiful photos in these exhibitions. But I didn't really see the Latinx community a lot represented. And so I decided that this space, this Instagram space, would be like a gallery showing that we love art too. We love like posting up and showing our cute photos in these like amazing exhibitions as well, and kind of collect it all in this one Instagram. And I got a lot of DMs from artists though, just showing me their work. And I realized that there's just so many artists out there that are looking for an outlet, that are looking to be amplified. Um, and truth be told, I love the idea of Latinx curated, but it was really hard to maintain because it's not like you can just look up a hashtag and gather all these photos. I had to really go hunting for people that I didn't even know in museums. I mean, it was really difficult to a task to do. But I tried to find another way to contribute to my community, and I found that this was the way. There were so many artists out there that had reached out to me. I at first kind of didn't want to engage with artists in the digital space because I didn't really think I had anything that I could contribute um, outside of just admiration. But the more time went by and the more I thought about it, I kind of realized there really was something I can do here, and that's kind of where the database came about. I can create this platform, manage it, put it together, and help artists, Latinx artists, amplify their work in this way.
Well, like I said, I have names for you that I still need to send over because I think, it's so important to connect that, right? Like I think very similarly from like the wine perspective, right? When I created the directory, it was because people didn't realize that there was Latina owned wine brands. And when they realized that,
Mhm.
they're like, wait, what? I want to support, like, let's support our community. And I think that's something we, even within
Yeah.
the art world, I think that there's this craving amongst our community and amongst other communities of color to support one another, to
Mhm.
amplify one another, to really show, like, because history has not been kind to people that come from
Mhm.
communities of color, to be in the United States.
Yep.
Um, and I think we're at this pivotal moment where we're just like, we we have to, like, we have no choice, right? Um, many of us. I'm not saying everybody. Let's be real. Not everybody's about that life, and that's okay. I'm not, we are, and that's what matters. But there's so many more of us who are about that, who do want to recognize. So the fact that you put this together, especially for something like that, I want to actually connect you with my friend, Norma, as well. She is like on the board of one of the museums here in LA. She has connections with a lot of Latino artists here, and I think that there could be some synergy there. So I really want to connect you guys. She was actually just featured also in Vogue Mexico. So yes,
I
I'm
think
so
I know
excited.
who you're talking about.
Yes, Norma is a good friend of mine. She's been on quite.
Yes.
I love. Yes, I. If you have not connected with her, I want to connect you guys, because she knows, she's a big art person. I've gone to a couple art openings with her, and she like knows everybody in LA. So I think that would be a really, I think that could be synergistic for you.
Yeah,
And I want to make sure
that
I
would
say
be
that.
awesome.
Yes, she's truly a remarkable person, as are you. What is next for you, Karen? Like, where do you want to go from here? I mean, you're like, it feels like you just keep like setting the bar higher and higher for yourself. So what do you think?
Well, 2024, I think is going to be another busy year of hitting goals. There's a couple of projects that I am working on. And I'm really trying Latinx Art Collective. There's just so much I want to do with that. I think there's a lot of opportunity to really make it into a stronger platform. And so I'm really working on building it, not just the actual database, but the team as well. And, with the Guggenheim, it'll be my 2-year anniversary in May. And so I'm just sort of thinking about what I want my goals to be with the museum as well, where I want my career with the museum to go. And yeah, just always bigger and always better things.
Our theme for, and my theme for 2024 is it's never too late. And I think you are a shining example of that as well. It's never too late to go after your dreams. It's never too late to change your mind. It's never too late. And I'm so, so happy that you came on and shared more of your story. If there's anything I did not ask or anything you want to add, I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to do so now.
Yeah, I definitely want to give a shout out to two Black women in particular who, I don't think they realize how much they of an impact they've had on me when I was a young museum gal, but Portia Moore and Nicole Ivy, the work that they've done in the field has been beyond uh, beyond important that I think a lot of people do not realize the contribution, the level of contribution that they've made. Um, and the work that they've done really inspired me when I was a young one. And so I just want to give a shout out to them and thank them for all the work that they've done, that they're doing, that they continue to do.
And I think that is so awesome because we need to make sure that we can always shout out the people that inspire us, that help us, that uplift us. And I am so excited, girl. I can't wait to go back to New York. And
Yes, please come back.
yeah, oh my gosh. We this time though, we have to do like we had to do I know your parents were there and it was so lovely seeing you. Girl, let me tell you, I don't know if you saw it, but from an outsider point of like perspective, I am sitting there in the front row. They were so proud of you. I don't think they mind that you're an art history major anymore.
Oh, they don't mind. They don't mind.
Especially they see their daughter going, look at like all these things that it's afforded you, right? I mean, you get to travel the world, you get to see all these amazing pieces, you get to meet these amazing people. I mean, and to recognize the privilege that comes with that is such a huge thing because so many people don't recognize that. And it's so important that anytime we do recognize the privileges that we do have. And but it was so lovely meeting your parents, and it was so cute to see their faces watching you. It was so cute.
I know. That honestly, a long time coming. I didn't even dawn on me that this really was the first time until they were there. And I'm like, wow, they've really never seen me do this. We've got to do that again. I want to bring them along to more things.
Well, are they so I think you said they were going to be moving, right? Did they have they moved or they moved out of the area?
No, 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 no. Still moving, but still in the DC area.
Okay.
There's time. I can drag them to more things. We got time.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. There you go. There you go. Well, next time we'll definitely have to do like we'll have to go hit up one of the wineries or something when I'm there next.
Yes, yes, I love that.
We'll have to figure out a way to bring the art and the wine to I mean,
Oh,
we ended up having the event at a pop art gallery right up your alley.
yeah, girl,
What did you think of the venue?
art and wine go together like I don't even know what. Honey and tea. The art world loves
Yes.
good wine.
See, we're gonna have to do something at the Guggenheim. You can be like, you know what, you want to bring in people? Let we got this.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Karen. I always enjoy talking to you. I'm so glad we've connected. I think, like I said, such a lovely human, and I am so excited to see all of the things that you do, not only with the Guggenheim, but with Latinx Art Collective and beyond. So thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your time, for sharing your lovely energy with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure as always.
So, and I'll let you know next time. I hopefully I'll be in. I'm sure I'll be in New York at least, if not for an event. I'll at least go for pleasure next year again.
Good. Definitely.
Until
Please come.
and of course, of course. Until next time, mi gente.
Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine Chisme Podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.